All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. First timers, welcome in the first place. Others, welcome back. I don't know how many of these we've done now in our little monthly series. But today we thought we would dig into communication. But before we do that, before we dig in, let me cut it over to Sonia to get us a little bit of instruction how to participate in these things. Oh, and one more thing. I know I've heard from a couple of you guys that it'd be nice to be able to see each other as we kind of try to foment group conversations. We're working on that someday. Stay tuned. Meanwhile, again, for first timers, this is really meant to be an informal conversation. I'll start with some slides, just kind of get us started. They're not meant to be comprehensive, but conversation starters. So jump in with comments and questions, etc. And hopefully over time we can start responding to each other. So this becomes more of a dialogue. All right, Sonia, over to you for some more instruction, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. Just wanted to take a quick moment to tell you how you can interact with us. So up at the top, there's a little button that is the raise hand button. And if you click on that, we will call on you and you can ask your question out loud. And if you would prefer to not be on audio or speak out loud, you can type your question in the question area that's a little bit below the hand area, and just type it in and we will read it aloud and then answer it. Also, just a quick FYI for everyone, we try our very best to get through everyone's questions and to get to all the raised hands. If we do not, we do a second session where we answer additional questions. So even if we don't get to it here, we will do a second recording and answer them there. So you'll still get some responses to your questions if you'd like. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Sonia. All right, guys, so let's just jump in. Again, food for thought, some basics of communication. Now, I should preface our comments that this is drawn from sort of palliative care experience, but also sort of latest thinking on communication around difficult subjects. But I should, before I forget, I mean, communication is a very, there's cultural overlay, there's vernacular, there are habits, there are customs, so communication far from one size fits all. So take this with a grain of salt. And the idea is to work within your own vernacular with people who speak that vernacular. But part of the trick here, especially around communication with serious illness, is that if you're talking to family or friends, that's sort of begs one mode. But caregivers are sort of professional clinical teams, medical teams. I mean, we know that healthcare has a language all its own. And communication gets real fraught really quickly. I mean, in some ways, I can't believe we don't learn more about communication in healthcare education. It's I don't recall having any classes in it. And in some ways, you think about it, sort of like maybe communication should probably be the only class. I mean, it's everything. So, or just about everything. And it's complicated. And I'm daily, never mind serious issues, in daily life, I probably involved in hundreds of miscommunications. This is my sense that most of them are just without consequence, but I think we're in some amount of miscommunication much or all of the time, which I kind of like that reminder too, because sometimes arguments erupt, but very often it's just a good old-fashioned misunderstanding, and it's nice to assume as much. But from there, especially around serious issues of consequence, we need to make sure we get our points across, that you get your point across, but also that you're able to take information in. Of course, it is a two-way street. So family and friends mode, that's probably a little bit more in your wheelhouse automatically. Although again, remember a reminder to kind of shore things up and circle back. When you're talking to clinical teams, it's really, really important that you talk clearly, that you put your points clearly, that you ask your questions clearly. Very often I'm with people who they think they're asking a question or implying it, but it's buried. And as difficult as this communicate to your doctor, hearing your doctor well is really, really tricky, especially in the purview of getting a diagnosis or a prognosis. when there's hot emotion in the mix, we shut down. So you're probably taking in every fourth or fifth word. So it's very important to ask doctors to repeat information. If they're doing their job well, they will automatically, but don't be shy about asking your doctor to repeat information, writing it down, recording these interviews and these conversations so that you can circle back and not miss anything. Okay, we'll dig in a little bit more, but each of these audiences begs for a slightly different approach in some ways. So here are the sort of basics of good communication, especially around serious illness or serious weighty subjects, loaded subjects. One is to prepare yourself, whether you're the talker or the listener, so kind of get in the mode, clear your mind to the degree you can, especially if you're walking to a heavy clinical appointment. Put the phone away, drop in, try to sink into the moment, be open, be ready to receive and be ready to speak. Comfort's a big thing. In the hospital, it's very common we would have these incredibly charged conversations in the hallway, because there was just enough space. That is just asking for trouble. So making sure everyone's comfortable, taking time to get everyone a seat that's appropriate. If you are dealing with pain, if you're having symptoms are rising up, it's a good time to take a little bit of pain medicine, for example. So get yourself in a position where you can actually receive. Teeing up the conversation, sort of warning shots. Today, Doc, I'm hoping to talk to you about X, Y, or Z. Or, even you can foreshadow some emotion. It's a hard day for me. There's some things I need to talk to you or ask you that are tricky for me, so bear with me. And it'd be so helpful if we can make sure to, please do repeat any information. I'm not sure how well I'm listening. This is a way you can kind of tee up and manage the expectations, your own as well as your audience. Say what you need. It's amazing to me how often I and others, we just don't actually say our point. We don't actually say what we're asked, what we're seeking. That happens all the time. Assume people aren't hearing you. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Say specifically what you need. Ask for feedback. Ask, did you hear me? Can you even ask for them to repeat back what they think they heard? Doc, I don't know what I'm saying. Can you mirror back to me? Can you parrot back to me what I was saying? Because I'm not sure I'm saying it right, for example. Meet people where they are. This is huge. So this is really a cue to most doctors who presume all sorts of things of their patients. That's a cue for all of us. You don't talk to someone where you think they should be or where they are, but where you think they should be or who you think they should be. You talk to them like as they are. So if you're talking to someone hasn't slept in days, go there. Assume like you're going to need to really talk slowly, etc. If you're talking to someone who has no idea that they're dealing with a tricky prognosis or have no idea that they have incurable disease, you need to start gingerly. You need to ease into the conversation. I've watched a lot of people with good intentions sort of beat each other up with hard information just because the other person wasn't in a mode to hear them well. Silence. Oh, silence is huge. Well, we have another slide on that later, but here I am trying to cram a lot of words. I'm not even following my own mechanics. I'm trying to get through these words very quickly, get them all out, blah, blah, blah. There's a real role for silence. So the trick, of course, is holding silence, but you got to let things bubble up. Otherwise, we'll just keep blowing past things. Acknowledging emotions. This is huge, especially in the medical situation. We talk about data. We try to relate data or information, but information when it comes to a human being, human experience, that means there's emotion involved and psychology involved. And it really can be very helpful to acknowledge emotions, even to say things like, I know this is really hard to hear, or I know this is really hard to say, or I see you well enough. Maybe we should just take a pause for a second and, well, your tears are okay, no problem there. But, these kinds of things, just responding to emotions can be a way to help each other feel seen and heard. So also just expect misinterpretations, miscommunications, expect misguided responses, expect to say things that actually accidentally step on toes, and just stay in real time, stay honest. Hey, ooh, I'm not so sure how that landed. I'm not sure I said that right. I'm so sorry. Maybe I could back up and try again. These kinds of things. This last note is, I think, really, really key. It's been really key in my own life. So sometimes as a disabled person, I'll front a lot of funny projections and comments from people. And if I follow every little letter of the word that is being sort of presented to me, I might find myself really upset and offended much of the time, or turned off in some way. But if I really pause and let myself think, what is this person trying to say to me? What do they mean? What's behind their words? Because words are so fumbly. Then usually I get to a much better place with people. And I think that sort of benefit of the doubt, both giving it and receiving it, are really powerful. Okay, so what not to say? That it's a very good, again, there's a cultural overlay here. So what may be appropriate for one person may not be for the next person. I've said the same words to two different people and gotten dramatically different responses in my life as a clinician. So take this with a grain of salt. But there are some approaching absolutes. Like, for example, one of the classic things to, is around death, is you will hear people say things like, "Oh, mom's gone on to a better place." That's the classic sort of, well, especially if a kid is involved, if a child is listening to that, well, they might say, "Well, where's a better place? There's a better place that doesn't involve me." And why did she leave me here in this lame place? So we can mislead people with questions like that, or statements like that. So if whatever you're saying has a belief system underneath it, of course we have to understand that people have different sets of beliefs. You may be talking to someone who does not believe in God, for example. So just be very careful with your projections. Another thing to avoid in good communication around serious illness is things like euphemisms. They may be sweeter to say, but very often we confuse the hell out of each other because we don't really understand what each other is implying. Again, especially with younger people. So when it comes to serious stuff, it may be less poetic, but sometimes it pays to be just very direct, very plain spoken. All right, guys. Silence, we already talked a little bit about this. I mean, gosh, silence is really difficult and really important. Not just talking more slowly as I hear myself do now, but actually shutting up. Take a deep breath, allow our nervous system to settle. We're in a better position to hear. We're in a better position to think through what's falling out of our mouths. So I can't say enough about this. It can get really awkward, but it's an awkwardness that pays off. So don't be afraid of silence. Hold it as long as you can. Body language, this is my favorite. I mean, there are our words, blah, 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 and our words that have meaning. They're important, but the majority of what's being communicated, what's being expressed, what's being received has to do with body language. Eye contact. Am I fidgeting in my chair? Well, doc, I don't know. Or is the doctor going to go, well, man, Mary, we have some bad news for you, but anyway, I got to run now. I'll talk to you later. There's just sort of, we say a lot with our bodies. So use that body. Pay attention to your body. Again, whichever side of the communication you're on, giving it or receiving it, pay attention to that body. Get into your body. Breathe into that body. It'll set your nervous system, open you up, but also you'll be able to transmit more faithfully. So, of course, there are all sorts of ways to communicate, like we've already talked. But one of the ways, so the medium can matter. Talking together in a digital format, it has its own peculiarities. Sitting down at a table facing each other can be a little confrontational, sometimes very useful, but the setting matters, the environment matters, the medium matters. And one of the things I find myself often recommending to folks is if you want to say something, get something off your chest, but you're struggling to find the words, or you're embarrassed, or it's just too difficult to do in real time. There's something just gorgeous about receiving a letter, about writing a letter, get everything out. And on the receiving end, there's no pressure. You can read it again and again. You can hold the paper, you can sit with it. There's something very powerful about letter writing. So maybe some of the time, maybe the things you want to say or ask are best put in a letter. I love that trick. It's not really a trick, but there you go. Another trick is, sometimes going for a walk can be really powerful, or classically going for a drive. A lot of teenagers will open up, and people will open up on a drive because they're facing, you're not staring at each other, you're just facing, you got plenty to look at. You're sitting side by side, and it's amazing what can come out in a conversation in that form. So maybe going for a walk or a stroll or a drive might be just the thing. We'll make a little nod here to letter writing in general too. Here's a prompt for My Lasting Letters, which our friend Frisch is her business. One of the things that she does is she help people draft letters. A dying person, she will help them draft a letter to their unborn grandkids or their spouse or whoever else. It can be a really gorgeous process. Look Frisch up, and there are others who do that work. It's beautiful. So here again, we've said this a little bit, but sometimes you just have to be just very plain spoken, direct, to the point, and you may need, even if you think you're implying, if you think it's obvious, you may need to ask, like, honey, I just need you to hug me, or I need you to go get X, Y, and Z, versus sort of fuming and storming around the house and sort of demonstrating that something needs to happen, but not saying what needs to happen. That's common. So try to be direct to the degree you can. And sometimes, with the nature of language being what it is, as imperfect as it is, sometimes the most direct way to talk is actually through metaphor or analogy. So that's okay too. But if you find yourself deliberately masking what you're trying to say with metaphor, that's different from trying to say something that doesn't have a word for it. Then metaphor may be just the thing. But you can always ask back and say, hey, do you think you heard me on that? I'm not sure I said it right, or I'm not sure you heard me. Maybe we should talk that out a little bit more. It may feel a little plodding, but it can be really a kind thing to do. Stop and check, repeat back, ask to repeat back. Oh, okay, so that's our little primer. That's the communication primer table setter. So let me pop out of the slides, and then we can go to questions and conversation, guys. Okay. You there?
We do have some hands up, so let me do some unmuting here. Gil, you've had your hand up. 1 sec, let me unmute you. It's thinking. Oh, there you are. Gil, are you there?
I'm here.
Great.
My question is, I've had a lot of encounters with clinicians where they are not listening to me.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I get through like the barrier of their time constraints and their inability to really be with me in the moment when they're there with me physically, but their heads aren't there, even if they're talking to me about a diagnosis or a treatment. I've had a bit of that in my life.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Gil. I bet you have. Many of us have. I've been on both sides of that one. I've been the inattentive doctor, and I've been the frustrated patient. It is very common, especially in this day and age of clinical medicine, being more about the computer data entry than actually talking to a person. And these little 15-minute encounters and blah, 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 all the stressors in the healthcare system, combined with a lack of training and education on the mechanics of communication, all conspire to make communicating, and then of course throw in the very tricky subject matter, and then all that conspires to make communicating with doctors shockingly difficult. So just to name the truth of what you're saying, Gil, you are far from alone in that. This is a huge problem. And this may be asking too much. I mean, after all, you're the one who's a patient. You're the one who is vulnerable. But like so often happens in being a patient or a caregiver in this world, you kind of have to take the bull by the horns a little bit. So I guess, Gail, if you're feeling up to it, I would coach you to say, hey, doc, I know you got stuff going on. I know that you're busy. I just, you almost shake them. I really need you right now. I need to describe something to you. I need you to hear me. That may be asking a lot for you to self-advocate like that, but the alternative is not being heard. The alternative is going down treatment pathways based on false assumptions, et cetera. So, and it really shouldn't be your responsibility. The professional should be able to lead this well. But they just don't. So back to my advice to you would be to simply just say it out loud. Hey, doc, I really need you to hear me. And you can ask them, can you repeat what I just said to you? Because it's really important to me. And again, you can preface it. I know you're busy. I know you got pressures on you that I don't understand, but so that kind of thing. It ain't easy, Gail, but that is really the way to get your point across.
Okay, we've got another hand up. Lonnie, or one sec, let me unmute you here. And apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name. Oh, there it is. Lonnie, are you there?
Yes, I am. I didn't have a question. Maybe I put my hand up by mistake. I'm just enjoying listening.
Well, we'll just say hi then.
Okay, hello.
All right, what else we
All
got?
right, Anne Marie, you've had your hand up. Sorry, everyone, for the wait on unmuting. There's some sort of time.
You were holding the silence.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Reframe.
Actually, you just brought that word, just jiggered something in my mind. I don't remember if I said this, but part of the mechanics of sort of setting the table for the conversation is and teeing it up is to contextualize it, to frame the conversation. We're here today because I have some serious things to ask, or some serious things to describe, or some important things to describe. You can set the table both by tone and tenor in how you set it up, how you contextualize it, how you frame the conversation.
All right, let me try to unmute. Jerry, I'm unmuting you. It might just take a second. We'll hold a silence in the meantime.
Jerry, there?
Oh, there it is. Jerry, can you hear us?
You know, I had to unmute myself.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I'm struggling with the element of keeping things confidential for the individual that I'm providing care for. I'm his medical power of attorney, and I'm with him every day, and I know the ins and outs of what's going on and when he has a good day and a bad day. We're Quaker, and so the other members of Quaker meeting often call me to ask how Tommy is doing. And we've had a few visits now that the vaccinations are kind of going through some of the elders. And then after a visit, they want to call and ask, how's Tommy doing? And I struggle with this because it's not my business to be the one to relay it. It's Tommy's business. And without wanting to be dismissive to them, I do often remind them that they're welcome to inquire of Tommy himself. And yet it's a challenge because I don't want to be rude, but I have to remind them that's not my place to be his informant.
Jerry, I'm sorry, did I just cut you off?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on your good point here. Thanks for your comment. Right. This is where you can, I don't think it doesn't, certainly doesn't sound rude to me. I mean, you can certainly invoke, the ethics and legalities around, privacy. You can simply say, I wish I could tell you, but honestly, but I am, as his caregiver, as a proxy, I am duty bound to defer to him. I just can't share information about him. You can invoke the law, get it off you feeling rude or otherwise. There's truth to that. There is something about privacy that you are duty bound to maintain. So
Mm.
I would invoke that. You can do it lovingly, and
Yeah.
then right on the backside, I'd say, but I bet Tom, was it Tommy?
Yeah, he's Tommy, I'm Jerry. Tom and
Yeah.
Jerry. So cute,
Okay.
right?
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Perfect.
is.
Okay. No, I was gonna say, I'm assuming obviously I don't know Tommy, but I was gonna say something like, but I bet Tommy would love to talk to you, but I bet he'd love to hear from you. One of the things that happens, again, with good intentions, but it has some hard consequences is, I've been in this position as a disabled person or as the patient. People will talk through me or around me. We'll talk to my family, we'll talk to my friends, we'll talk to everyone but me. It's a funny thing we do to someone who's sick or otherwise infirmed in some way.
Yeah,
It's
it's as if
scaring
they
them.
can't see that he's capable of articulating for himself. They just see his physical, he's in a wheelchair. They just see that, oh, he's fatigued. And it kind of really aggravates me. So my challenge is really what it triggers in me. I've been in a wheelchair myself. I've been, resuscitated and was in a head-on collision. So I also have had that happen. So my empathy is really with that. I have some minor disabilities left over, and needless to say, it's really triggering sometimes the way people don't see the infirmed, as you said.
Yeah. Oh, amen. I mean, it's complicated, and but it happens all the time. I grew up, my mom uses a wheelchair. I've watched people talk right through her.
Mm.
I've caught myself doing it weirdly, and I don't know what the heck the psychology is around it. But all to say is it happens. And this is where, Jerry, I mean, this has come up before in various conversations where unfortunately ostensibly you're the one in need, you're the one who's sick, or you're the one whatever, and you got to be also everyone's teacher. It's a bummer, but it's true. And you can kind of take up that mantle or struggle underneath the weight of it. And in other words, you can either say, okay, part of this gig of being Tommy's proxy and being a person in this world means I'm just going to have to kind of take it. I'm going to, when these things pop up with the elders or whatever it is, say, maybe there's a moment to say, I know you mean well, but gosh, when you don't talk to him, you're sending him a signal, blah, blah, blah. I bet most
Oh,
of the
that's
people you're talking
good.
to really
Uh,
they don't think they're being rude. They probably think they're being really respectful and giving Tommy his space and whatever they talk themselves into. I doubt they're sitting there saying, gosh, I don't want to talk to Tommy. Like, let's screw that guy. Let's go, So
right.
assuming the best of people and speaking to that good intention, but clarifying with them, saying, hey, do you have a minute to talk about this? Because this brings up something for me. I think it's actually really important. Does that
Yeah.
sound reasonable, Jerry? Could you do that?
Yeah, and I think it's a key point in patience, having patience. The person wanting to speak with Tommy might even feel like they don't have the patience within themselves to give him. I think it's really that, from what I see. They're in a faster paced world than he is. And to meet him where he's at, they are forced to slow down. And that's not something that people do very easily, especially in this society. Being an end of life doula as well, it is definitely within my capacity to advocate for the infirmed and say, hey, he's right here.
Yeah.
And then also it kind of hits on that note of sort of social justice in a way, in that, see the people again where they're at, whether it's stemming from, they're disabled, or it's their, their genealogy, whatever the case may be. Yeah, okay, well, thank you. This definitely has helped, because it's a challenge. This communication point is really a challenge for me.
It is, and thank you for bringing this up, Jerry. It's a huge, huge point. We all find many of us, myself included, find ourselves making these kinds of mistakes all the time, which is another reason to sort of set the table that communication is just fraud. It's just tricky. It's just difficult. It's not you suck, I'm better. It's just, just assume the best. Say, hey, but don't hesitate to reorient people, shake people, sometimes say, hey, I need you to slow down here with me for a second, whatever it may be. If we all got better at asking for what we needed and sort of sharing with each other as we learn these lessons, we'd quickly be in a better place. Again, I just want to acknowledge that it may feel a little unfair that not only do you have to be sick or tend to someone who's not feeling so well, whatever it is, on top of it, you have to be teaching people. Yeah, I'm sorry to say that, but I do think there's some truth in it. You don't owe the world any of this, but when you have a moment, when you feel the energy to do so, I think it's really, you'll be well served by that, as will they. I mean, the times when someone has stopped me, I've been that busy doctor, and sometimes the time the patient has shook me, I've been certainly I felt bad, I was embarrassed, but that's on me. But ultimately, I felt so grateful. I was so glad that they taught me that lesson, shook me, reminded me. And then it ended up being, too, the times where there's a little bit of a confrontation. You may have had this experience, guys, where it's hard, conflict sucks, but it can be the beginning of a kind of a bond. The folks where I've had some chafing with, one way or another, if we dare to air it and deal with it, that difficulty very often ends up becoming a bond. So anyway, I should move on here, but your point's is very well taken, Jerry, and I hope my response makes some good sense to you.
It does. You can't hear my head nodding, but thank you again for the time.
Great. Thank you, Jerry. Okay. What else?
Next up, Laura, you've had your hand up. I'll unmute you here. It might just take a moment.
Muffin Man says hello.
Unmute myself and say
Laura.
hi. Hey, hi to BJ's kitty.
This is the Muffin Man, everybody. This is one of
Muffin Man.
Anyway, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
Well, I have comments and a question to follow up. So first, I just want to thank you so very much for your time and for your thoughtful efforts in making these possible. I'm often not here, but I listen to them when they become available on my own time, and it's just great. And I'm sorry you can hear the nervousness in my voice. You're such a hero of mine, so I have like great nervousness speaking to you. I dabble in philosophy and psychology, and both of those disciplines assume that disagreement and hurt feelings are often arising for not understanding each other. And I just want to remind everybody here and who's listening in the future that miscommunication is possible when you're talking and when you're not talking. So whether or not you're using words, miscommunication is possible. And so I actually think that's why being honest is so incredibly valuable. Truthful and candid and direct, as you were saying, communication. Even all of that can still lead to misunderstandings. So you might as well start there. And avoid all of the other pretty much guaranteed ways to miscommunicate, which is leading a bunch up to assumption, right?
Totally. Oh, I love what you're saying. I'm so with you. I mean, I think just start. It's like, let's just start with the assumption that we're going to screw up. I mean, it just sort of takes the sting out, and like you're doing, I mean, it pretty quickly gets you kind of chuckling. So I think that's a brilliant advice. I mean, assume that we're miscommunicating, yourself included. It's hard to say, I'm having just worked on a book not that long ago and all this stuff. It is really hard to figure out what you mean, what you think is hard enough. Articulating it, what you think or feel is super hard. and then articulate in a way that it can be received. I mean, it's such a thought. The mission from the thought from the brain down the mouth and out into the ether to receiving the ears, the eyes of the person. There's so many ways it can go spectacularly wrong. And just like we're doing here, I mean, that's just funny, it's awkward, it's goofy, it's basic, it's human. So I think you're so right on to sort of presume that and even say it out loud. So you can name it, no one has to feel bad like they're screwing up or whatever else. But I love that advice.
My follow-up is you mentioned letter writing, which I love. What do you think about other forms of effective communication on, you know, grave topics like death and dying in terms of poetry, fiction, prose, music, pictures, all that? You know, we haven't really. I wrote the story on Ragnar and the breaching whales.
Oh, beautiful.
So, I mean, like, how do you, I mean, obviously you're supportive, but I would love for you to talk to people about these other modes of communication that aren't always like conversational.
Yes. So thank you. So most of what I've been saying so far on this mechanics of good communication, the context really very often is a charged conversation with family members or friends or a clinician, where something needs to be transmitted and something needs to be gained, and I'm speaking to the sort of strategy of getting what you need and asking for what you need and hearing what you need to hear. So that's the context in this more sort of prosaic way. Those are the mechanics of sort of communicating difficult news. So that begs for like a more directness. It can be even boring. Like I need no flourish. I just need to say something very directly. I need X or I think X. So that's so much of underlying my comments so far. But to your point into something, Laura, which is super, super critical. We touched on a little bit around a nod to metaphor. But there's, in terms of feeling seen and heard in this world, which I'm not sure there's a higher human, or maybe it's not even just human. I don't know that there's a higher need that any of us, any living creature has, but to be seen and heard on some level by someone somewhere. And we also have needs to just be, we're expressive creatures. So even if we don't know who's going to hear it, sometimes we just need to get things out. So for all of these reasons, poetry, fiction can be the truest way to speak to something, factual, because we just don't necessarily have the right words for things. We often have to talk around them, or make the point by analogy, or make the point by sort of an aesthetic. It puts you in a vibe and a mood. I mean, so this gets exquisitely interesting, and humans are gifted. We have multiple ways of communicating versus other species on this planet. So I totally want to hear what you're saying. The need to express oneself, the need to explore the human experience, yours or others. That's the art world has so much to offer us here. The world of the arts it's not entertainment. It's not just a distraction. It's not a nicety. This stuff is essential. So even if you're trying to stay sort of true to fact, I'd still point you to fiction. Even if you're trying to be direct, I'd still point you to metaphor, etc. So thanks for making that point, Laura.
Thank you, BJ.
Mm-hmm. And okay. I love your story about Ragnar, by the way.
We've had a few more hands up. Anne-Marie, I'm going to try you again since it was a little off last time. Oh, where'd you go?
Is that working?
I think so. Hi.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I didn't realize I had to hit my mute button as well. Hi, BJ. Thank you for your presentation today.
Sure.
The communication that I wanted to address is directly with my mother. I am her 24/7 caregiver. She's 83 and very well. She's doing very well. But what I'm finding with her is the desire to ask questions that aren't the question that she really wants answered. So I'm talking about like the basic stuff that leads into more important stuff. So for instance, she'll say something like, do we have any nail polish? And I know that we do, and she knows that we do because she's done her nails before. And I know that the real question that she's trying to get to is actually, would you mind getting the nail polish for me so I can do my nails? And so I try to very gently direct her, because what I'm concerned about and what has happened is that when it comes to something much more important, she's still not able to express herself the way she needs to. And so, for instance, the other day she informed me that she had black floaters in front of one of her eyes. She had had them for a while, but the day she told me about it was when they stopped happening. And so, of course, insofar as she was just diagnosed with a few strokes just a couple months ago, we're being hypersensitive to anything that's been going on. And she didn't recognize that that could indicate she had a detached retina. And so it, compelled me to call the eye doctor. We had to get in the next day to make sure, even though the spots were gone, that there wasn't something more important happening. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to educate her about how to ask the question that is more direct and to express herself more directly about what is happening.
So do you, one thing your question's triggering, Emery, for me is that, in terms of also meeting people where they are, and I'm going to make a generalization. You triggered me when you mentioned your mom being 3, so forgive me on this quick tangent. But, part of meeting people where they are and setting the table, all this stuff is like, a lot of people can't hear very well. I've been in some really charged conversations with families and patients in a clinical setting where we're trying to describe our events or ask very charged questions. And halfway through the conversation, I'll look over and realize the patient's hearing aids are out on the table and no one thought to do, so and let me circle back to your point, but you're reminding me of part of the mechanics here include things like, can people hear you and see you? Don't take that kind of for granted either. So tangent, thank you for your patience. But to your mom, so Emery, is your mom fully cognitively there? I mean, is she, is there any sense that there's a compromise in her ability to think clearly, or is she with us in a full way?
She's with us mostly. I mean, she would suffer from, anybody would say, old age forgetfulness. But in terms of her capacities, I mean, half the time she's reminding me of stuff that, we're supposed to be doing tomorrow, that kind of a thing, which I'm always impressed by. So for all intents and purposes, she's well mentally and emotionally. And she lived by herself for a very long time. And when we first moved in together, which was just in November, it was for several weeks, we were just cracking each other up because, one of us would say something like, what? And I recognized that what seemed to me, the detriment of living by yourself is that you forget how to be in conversation with people. And you forget what it's like to have somebody there, or like forgetting words, for instance. Like she would be trying, and I know a lot of people have dementia, have trouble with grasping words too, but she would be sitting there looking at me like, I know what this word is. And she would get it. But I would be like, I think that this is really a result of just having lived by yourself for so long. You didn't have to talk to anybody. You didn't have to express yourself to anybody. So I'm trying to learn how to, not pull these things out of her, but just to help her along. So it's easy for her. And then I understand more easily what it is she's trying to get to.
Right. Well, this is so tricky. So knowing your audience here. So, if dementia is creeping in and it's been things, so it may be asking too much. And again, I don't know your mom, I'm speaking in generalities here, but at some point it may be asking too much for her to learn new tricks around communicating or to be able to contemplate communication. So one thing that you check in with your mom is sort of what's possible here. If she's not able to track and take on new information and learn new skills, then in some way I wouldn't push her to try, in some level it starts getting not cruel, but harsh to even ask of it her if she can't. So I'm not saying that's the situation here, but it's worth checking, like what's even possible for her to take in. And it may be that this is as your part of your role as caregiver is knowing your mom so well. So when she says, do we have nail polish or where's nail polish, whatever, you know that she's asking you to get the nail polish. And it may be that you're left to interpret your mom in this way. It may be that way. But before you sort of yield to that notion, what about just sitting with her and saying, hey, Mom, can we talk about talking? Can we talk about communication? I know you so well, but I also know that there's sometimes you need things that aren't being voiced. And I'm worried that, I'm going to miss a cue or whatever it is. So can we talk through like how to talk to make sure that you're getting what you need? Because I would hate to go past a cue or something like that. Does that seem accessible? That kind of conversation feel accessible?
Absolutely. And insofar as, again, my concern isn't so much about the nail polish. It's like when something really is happening, that she's not able to express herself. And, we don't have like a counselor that we can get, a social worker that can help us, help her figure out how to express herself. So I'm just trying to do what I can to, this morning it was, oh, that water noise I heard in my ears for a while is gone. And I was like, what water noise? And then that's another thing, like, is that a symptom of stroke? Should I be concerned that she had this noise, but she's only telling me when it stops, So it's the bigger implications of, am I doing the right thing to help her? But I appreciate your suggestion about just having that conversation.
Yeah. And as these little, small or big examples come up, like you can call her out. Hey, Mom, you're doing that thing with the nail polish. You're doing that thing where you said, you think I know what you're saying, whatever. You can be kind of playful about it and just call it out. And over time, you can, we can get a little crisper. And then my last point would be just the realities of caring for someone. It gets tricky, and at some point you do all that you can do. But it may be your mom is just never going to tell you about the water in her ears until it's gone. It may be that's just that is who she is and the way she's wired. And that's so also after you've tried these things to improve communication and check in and work on it together, at some point you're invariably going to be left to say, well, I did my best, or I did what I could. I can only work with what I know, and this is Mom. A lot of people will bury symptoms like that. It's just kind of in their nature. So I guess my last comment would be to be, after some constructive efforts, to get realistic about what you can rightfully expect. And caregiving is such a clunky, goofy thing. So this may be one of those things where you go, well, it is what it is. That may be lame advice, but it may be somewhere where you have to land.
Appreciate it. Thank you, BJ.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Linda, you've had your hand up for a while. I'll unmute you on this end, and then you can unmute yourself on your end.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, Linda.
Hello, BJ.
Hi, Linda.
I'm new.
Welcome.
Thank you. I wanted to just follow up with the Jenny Tommy exchange.
Oh, Jerry and Tommy.
Jerry. Sorry, Jerry. Yes, Jerry and Tommy exchange. Because in doing a lot of reading and writing around all this, there are a number of books out there that are trying to be helpful in terms of addressing the block that people have. Well, I don't want to talk to Tommy because I don't know what to say and I don't know what to do. And one of the suggestions I made in something I wrote is I said, stop, see the whole person. It's like, go back to what your relationship has been with this person and just speak to them from that. They're more than their current medical situation. Mm-hmm. Is there some way you can continue, in this case, to make him a part of the Quaker meeting? Mm-hmm. How do we do that? Mm-hmm. So that's.
Thank you, Linda. Did you say you write on this subject?
Yeah, actually, I just finished a book that's coming out in April.
Oh, great. What's the title so we can all keep an eye out for it?
Oh, okay. I did not want to promote myself, but
maybe helpful.
It's called The Courage to Care, Being Fully Present with the Dying.
Cool.
And I'm a bedside singer and end of life doula and hospice worker. So it comes out of all of that.
Beautiful. Well, and as you were talking, Linda, thank you. And as you were talking about, pulling it back to the dynamic, the relationship, the person, not just the mechanics of communication. And sometimes the way in to have big conversations may be to talk about something lighter, maybe
Right.
Even if I'm trying to walk into a difficult conversation, asking prognosis or trying to convey it or whatever it is, it still may make sense to start by just easing in, saying, so talking about not talking about how beautiful the day is, or how someone looks, or their shoes, or you can, underneath all these sort of the strategies are humans trying to interrelate and trying to be together. And so there's more than just our information we're trying to convey. And sometimes setting that table can be speaking to things first that have nothing to do with the conversation you want to get to kind of get us into the mode, get us in the vibe, and remember why we're here. It's not just to convey data, but we're two people who care about each other or are entwined in some way, and start there. And oftentimes the rest will flow just very organically. So if I heard you correctly, thank you, Linda, and we'll keep an eye out for your book.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Denise, you've had your hand up for a while. Let me unmute you here.
Hello?
Hi, Denise.
Okay, great. I wondered if we could, if you could discuss briefly a little bit more about the confrontation. You see, I tend to, when I communicate, I always seem to fall back on my easygoingness and my cheerfulness. But underneath it, I'm really very frustrated and very angry about a lot of stuff. And it's hard not to cross over into, because I'm always suppressing it, and I live alone. I don't like talking to anybody anymore, and I've just noticed that I easily cross over, and that's why a lot of times I don't discuss things, because I got a lot of anger under there.
Well, Denise, I know. Hi, Denise.
Hi.
It's good to hear that voice again. For us, the guys on the call, Denise and I go way back. Well, Denise, amen. I mean, this isn't about being tidy. This is about being real, unfurling ourselves in our realities so that we can be seen and heard. And so I don't think, I don't think anger, disappointment, hard feelings, I don't think those are the problem. I don't think you should feel the need to cover them up per se. But just like you just did now, Denise, owning it and saying, hey, I got to tell you, I got a lot of anger in me, and I'm really frustrated, and it may come out in funny ways. I guess I need to be real with you, just like you teed it up just now, Denise. I think it'd be so helpful for your audience, knowing what they're getting into, and they will also know how to read you, because otherwise, if you don't preface it, I could imagine being like, gosh, is she angry at me? What did I do? And then I get all frozen and weird, and around we go. But if you preface it, if you contextualize it, if you own it and say, here's where I am. I'm a nice person. I mean this and that. I'm a loving person, but underneath it too, I got some other things going on. I'm also an angry person, and it may pop out, and I just need you to know that. Or so setting that table, I think will make a huge difference. Does that make sense to you, Denise? I mean, I know you
does.
do.
It does. Thank you. I've actually tried doing that, and sometimes anger has given me results. I remember kicking a chair at a surgeon's office and actually getting results finally, which was it was not my best moment.
Well, hey, again, we're so the politeness, time constraints, all these things can hem us in too much. But when we're talking about health, death, illness, this huge stuff. So pretending it's not won't get you very far. Again, I own those feelings, and sometimes a theatrical demonstration is in fact a way to get yourself heard. So if it needs to come to that, it needs to come to that. I mean, I think just honoring the honesty, honoring the truth of where you are, and what's going on will help your audience too. It may not be a pleasant exchange, but being pleasant isn't always the point. Being heard, I would say, is. So keep on keeping on, Denise. I love how you are in the world.
Thank you, BJ. You're looking wonderful too. Very handsome. Ooh la la.
Oh, shucks. All right, girl. Well, that was very clear. Thank you for that. Oh God. Well, good to hear your voice, Denise. All right, guys. We're coming up on our time here. Any other?
We do have some more hands, but I want to be respectful of people's schedules and time. So maybe we can just go to the last slide, and I'll say to everyone who still has their hand up, if you would like to send us a question, BJ, can you go to the last slide with the question on it?
Yeah.
You can send it to info@mettlehealth.com, and we will answer it in the second session. So again, I apologize if we weren't able to get to you, but if you would like to send us a question, just type it up and send it to info@mettlehealth.com, and we will address it in the second session and post those and send you a link to them tomorrow.
Okay, guys, thank you. That went quickly. But thanks for joining us. As the habit we're into now is to end these conversations with one more prompt. And our prompt for this week would be, who do you have the most trouble communicating with and why? I just realized that's grammatically incorrect. With whom do you have the most trouble communicating and why? So shoot us a note with your answer. We'd love to hear, and then we'll make these. We'll present these answers out to the group. So anyway, guys, that's it for now. Thanks for joining. All feedback welcome. Works in progress these are. So let us know how these are working for you, what you might like to see different, etc. And have yourself a good weekend. Where'd it go? Well, okay, bye guys.